The conference room smelled of expensive leather and desperation, the kind that clings to people who need money more than air. I watched them through the one-way glass, rehearsing their pitch with the frantic energy of drowning men reaching for driftwood, and I knew exactly what I was about to do. After all, Madison, Chen, and Brett Kawinski had taught me everything I needed to know about power 15 years ago, when they shoved my head into a toilet and flushed it while the entire cafeteria laughed. The fluorescent lights of Lincoln High's cafeteria buzzed with the same monotonous hum as they did every day, but that Tuesday in junior year, they seemed to flicker in time with my racing heartbeat. I clutched my lunch tray, mystery meat, wilted salad, chocolate milk, and scanned the room for a safe place to sit. There was no safe place. Not for Alex Rivera. Well. Madison's voice cut through the cafeteria noise like a knife through silk. She stood blocking my path, all 5'9" of her, blonde hair cascading over her designer jacket that probably cost more than my mom's monthly rent. If it isn't Scholarship Boy. Brett materialized beside her. His Letterman jacket stretched across shoulders that had made him varsity quarterback since freshman year. His smile was all teeth, no warmth. Dude, did you actually show up in those shoes again? He pointed at my worn Skechers, the ones I'd resold 3 times because new ones weren't in the budget. My face burned. Around us, conversations died. Phones came out. This was entertainment. I like them, I said quietly, hating how my voice shook. You like them? Madison's laugh was sharp enough to draw blood. Brett, he likes them. How adorable. Hey everyone, Alex likes being poor. The cafeteria erupted in laughter. Not everyone, some kids looked away. Uncomfortable but enough. Always enough to make me wish I could dissolve into the floor tiles. Leave him alone, a voice said. Sarah Kim, one of the few people who'd ever spoken to me like I was human, stood up from her table. Seriously, Madison. Grow up. Madison's eyes narrowed. Stay out of this, Kim. Unless you want everyone to know about. It's fine, I interrupted, my throat tight. I was just leaving. I turned toward the exit, but Brett's foot shot out. The world tilted. My tray flew, and I went down hard, my face connecting with the linoleum. Chocolate milk exploded across my shirt. Mystery meat slid across my cheek. The laughter was deafening. From my position on the floor, I saw them, Madison, filming on her phone. Brett doubled over with laughter, and behind them, a sea of faces. Some laughing, some filming, some pretending they didn't see. Oops, Brett said, his voice dripping with mock concern. My bad, Rivera. Should watch where you're going. I didn't cry. I'd learned not to cry freshman year, when they'd locked me in the equipment shed overnight after practice. I gathered my things, my hands shaking, and walked to the bathroom with as much dignity as a person covered in cafeteria food could manage. In the mirror, I looked at my reflection, milk-soaked hair, sauce-stained shirt, red mark blooming on my cheekbone, and I made myself a promise. Not revenge, not hatred, something colder, more patient. I will become someone they can never touch. The view from my office on the 47th floor of the Pinnacle Tower stretched across the city like a promise fulfilled. Manhattan glittered below, each light a small victory in the empire I'd built from nothing but code, coffee, and that burning promise I'd made to my 17-year-old self. Mr. Rivera? My assistant Priya appeared in the doorway, her tablet glowing. The 10 a.m. pitch meeting. Startup called Innovate Tech Solutions. They're in conference room B. Background? I swiveled my chair away from the window, my expression neutral. 2 founders, Madison Chen and Brett Kawinski. Both 32, so same age as you. Decent pedigree on paper. Chen has an MBA from Wharton. Worked at Goldman for 3 years before quitting to start this. Kawinski did a stint at Google. Product management. They're seeking $15 million in series of funding for an AI-powered recruitment platform. My heart rate didn't change. I'd trained myself too well for that. But something cold settled in my chest, familiar and sharp. Interesting. They specifically requested Apex Ventures because of our portfolio in HR tech. They don't know you're the managing partner they think they're pitching to David Torres. Priya glanced up from her tablet. Should I tell them otherwise? No. I stood, buttoning my Tom Ford suit jacket, custom-tailored, Italian silk, worth more than my entire wardrobe had been in high school. Let them think they're pitching to David. I'll observe from the viewing room. I want to hear what they have to say. Priya's eyebrow raised slightly. She'd worked with me for 5 years and knew when I was up to something. Anything I should know? Just that this might be personally interesting. The viewing room was windowless and dark, the one-way glass offering a perfect view into conference room B. I settled into the leather chair, pressed the intercom button, and watched as the door opened. Madison Chen walked in first. 15 years had been kind to her in the way money usually is. Her blonde hair was now professionally highlighted, her suit impeccable, her confidence unshaken. She carried herself like someone who'd never been told no in any meaningful way. Brett Kawinski followed, and I felt my jaw tighten involuntarily. He'd kept his athletic build, though his hairline had receded slightly. His suit was expensive but not quite expensive enough, the kind someone wears when they're trying to look successful but aren't quite there yet. They didn't look nervous. Why would they? They were Madison Chen and Brett Kawinski, golden children who'd floated through life on privilege and charisma, never facing real consequences for anything. David Torres, my COO and frontman for situations like this, entered last. Miss Chen, Mr. Kawinski. Welcome to Apex Ventures. I'm David Torres. Pleasure, Madison said, her smile dazzling as she shook his hand. We're thrilled to be here. Apex has an incredible reputation. Thank you. Before we begin, I should mention that our managing partner will be observing. David gestured toward the one-way glass. He prefers to watch initial pitches remotely, but he'll join us if he's interested. Brett glanced at the mirror, his reflection staring back at him without recognition. Of course. No problem. They couldn't see me. But I could see everything: the way Madison smoothed her skirt before sitting, the way Brett's knee bounced with barely contained energy, the way they exchanged a look that said, "We've got this." So, David said, settling into his chair, tell me about Innovate Tech Solutions. What would you do if you held the fate of your bullies in your hands? Would you help them or watch them fall? Drop your thoughts below, I read every comment. Madison launched into their pitch with practiced ease. The recruitment industry is broken. Companies spend an average of $4,000 per hire and 42 days to fill a position. Yet 33% of new hires quit within their first 6 months. Why? Because human bias infiltrates every stage of hiring. She clicked her remote, and a sleek presentation appeared on the screen. Graphics, charts, market analysis, all professional, all polished. Innovate Tech Solutions eliminates bias through AI-powered candidate matching. Our algorithm analyzes job requirements, company culture data, and candidate profiles to create perfect matches. No more gut feelings. No more culture fit discrimination. Just data-driven hiring that increases retention by 68%. Brett leaned forward. We've been running a beta with 15 mid-size companies. Our results speak for themselves. Another slide appeared, showing impressive retention rates and hiring time reductions. We're seeking $15 million in Series A to scale our platform, expand our sales team, and capture the SMB market before competitors move in. David nodded, making notes on his tablet. Impressive numbers. What's your moat? What prevents a company like LinkedIn or Indeed from building this? Time to market and proprietary data, Madison said without hesitation. We've spent 2 years training our AI on successful hires across industries. That dataset is our competitive advantage. By the time the big players notice, we'll be indispensable to thousands of companies. I watched them perform, and I had to admit grudgingly that they were good. The pitch was solid. The business model made sense. The market opportunity was real. But something nagged at me. Tell me about your team, David said. Who's building this technology? Brett shifted almost imperceptibly. We have a solid engineering team. 4 developers, all from top programs. Names? Our CTO is. We're actually still finalizing that position. Madison's smile flickered. We had someone, but they left for personal reasons. We're interviewing candidates now. So, you're raising $15 million without a technical co-founder? David's tone remained neutral, but I knew him well enough to hear the skepticism. We have contractors handling development, Brett said quickly. And I have a technical background from my time at Google. Product management isn't engineering, David replied. Who actually wrote the algorithm you're pitching? Silence. Brief. But telling. We worked with a consultant, Madison said. But the IP is ours. Fully transferred. Through the glass, I leaned forward. There it was, the crack in the facade. They were selling an AI platform they didn't fully understand. Built by people they'd probably underpaid and undercredited. Some things never changed. David flipped through something on his tablet, his expression unreadable. Your financial projections show you'll be profitable within 18 months. That's aggressive for a Series A company in this space. Walk me through your assumptions. Madison and Brett exchanged a glance quick, almost imperceptible, but I caught it. The kind of look that said we didn't prepare for this question. Well, Brett started. We're assuming a 40% conversion rate on our sales pipeline, with an average contract value of Brett. 40%. David interrupted. Industry standard for B2B SaaS in the first year is closer to 15 to 20%. What makes you different? Our product is superior, Madison said, her confidence returning. Once companies see the ROI, they sign. We're not just another recruitment tool, we're revolutionary. I pressed the intercom button. My voice filled the conference room, distorted slightly by the speaker. Define revolutionary. They both startled, looking toward the one-way glass like deer caught in headlights. You're your managing partner? Madison asked David, who nodded. Yes. He's interested. Answer his question. Brett cleared his throat. Revolutionary means we're fundamentally changing how companies approach hiring. Instead of posting jobs and hoping, they're using predictive AI to identify candidates who'll succeed and stay. Predictive based on what data? I asked. Historical hiring patterns are riddled with the very biases you claim to eliminate. If your algorithm learns from past hires at companies with homogeneous workforces, you're not eliminating bias, you're automating it. Silence. Heavy and uncomfortable. We've built-in safeguards, Madison said. Blind resume reviews. Diverse training data. From where? You mentioned proprietary data from successful hires. Define successful. Are you measuring performance reviews, promotion rates, or just whether someone stayed employed for 6 months? I paused. Because retention isn't the same as success, Miss Chen. Sometimes people stay in jobs they hate because they need the paycheck. Your algorithm might be optimizing for desperation, not fit. The color drained from Madison's face. Brett's jaw clenched. David glanced at the mirror, a slight smile playing at his lips. He loved when I did this, dissected pitches with surgical precision, exposing the gaps between marketing and reality. Those are valid concerns, Brett said, recovering. And they're exactly why we need funding to expand our data science team. Refine our models. Address edge cases. Edge cases? My voice was cold. Systemic bias isn't an edge case, Mr. Kawinski. It's the central problem you claim to solve. If you can't articulate how your solution avoids perpetuating discrimination, you're not revolutionary. You're just expensive. Madison's hands curled into fists on the table. I knew that gesture frustration barely contained. I'd seen it 15 years ago when a teacher had questioned her on an essay she'd clearly plagiarized. With all due respect, she said, her voice tight, I think we've proven our concept. 15 companies are actively using our platform. They're seeing results. The market opportunity is $200 billion. We're not asking you to believe in our vision, we're asking you to look at our traction and recognize what we've already built. Built by whom? I asked. I'm sorry. You mentioned contractors. Consultants. A CTO who left. Who actually architected the system you're selling. Another pause. Longer this time. Multiple contributors. Brett said carefully. It was a collaborative. Names. I don't see how that's relevant to. I'm about to write a $15 million check, Mr. Kawinski. Everything is relevant. My tone left no room for argument. Who built your algorithm? Madison's perfectly composed facade cracked. A contractor named Jeremy Walsh. MIT graduate. Brilliant engineer. We brought him in early stage. And he developed the core matching logic. But we directed the vision, we secured the clients. We built the business. The technology is just one piece. Where is Jeremy Walsh now? He moved on to other projects. Did you offer him equity? Silence. Did you credit him in your patents? More silence. Miss Chen, Mr. Kawinski, let me tell you what I see. I stood in the viewing room, though they couldn't see me rise. I see 2 business side founders who identified a market opportunity, hired someone smarter than them to build it, likely underpaid and undercredited that person, and are now seeking millions to scale technology they don't fully understand. You're not founders, you're middlemen with PowerPoint. Brett's face flushed red. Now wait just a... I'm not finished. My voice cut through his objection like a blade. You want to know what else I see? I see 2 people who've spent their entire lives taking credit for other people's work. I see entitlement dressed up as entrepreneurship. I see the kind of people who think confidence and charisma can substitute for competence and character. Madison stood abruptly. I don't know who you are, but you don't get to speak to us like, sit down, Miss Chen. Something in my tone made her freeze. Maybe it was the authority. Maybe it was something else, a recognition she couldn't quite place, a ghost of something familiar. She sat. David, I said, I'm coming in. The walk from the viewing room to conference room B took 30 seconds. 30 seconds to prepare my face, my posture, my words. 30 seconds to decide exactly how I wanted this to unfold. I'd imagined this moment in 1,000 different ways over the years. In my fantasies, I was cruel, vindictive. I destroyed them publicly, spectacularly, the way they destroyed me that day in the cafeteria, and 100 days before and after. But standing outside the conference room door, I realized something. I didn't need to destroy them. They'd already done that to themselves. I just needed to show them. I opened the door. Madison and Brett were still seated, their backs to me, whispering urgently to each other. David saw me first, standing smoothly. Miss Chen, Mr. Kawinski, I'd like to introduce you to our managing partner and founder of Apex Ventures. They turned. I watched recognition hit them in stages. First, confusion, who is this person? They look familiar. Then, disbelief, it can't be. That's impossible. Finally, horror, understanding crashing down like a collapsing building. Alex? Madison's voice was barely a whisper. Alex Rivera? I walked to the head of the table, each step measured and deliberate, and sat in the leather chair that had been waiting empty. The city stretched out behind me through floor-to-ceiling windows. A kingdom I'd built while they'd been coasting on their parents' money and their own hollow charm. Hello, Madison. Brett. I smiled, thin and cold. It's been a while. Brett's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. You're the managing partner? Of Apex Ventures. Founder and CEO, actually. We manage $4 billion in assets across 63 portfolio companies. I folded my hands on the table. But please, continue your pitch. You were about to explain how your algorithm eliminates bias in hiring. I'm fascinated. Madison had gone pale, all the color draining from her professionally made-up face. Alex, we didn't know. Didn't know what? That scholarship boy would amount to anything. I kept my voice pleasant, conversational. That the kid you tormented for 4 years might end up in a position to determine your future. That actions have consequences. That was high school, Brett said, his voice cracking. We were kids. Stupid kids. Surely you don't hold a grudge. I leaned back in my chair. Oh, I don't hold grudges, Brett. Grudges are for people who didn't use their pain as fuel. I hold something much more valuable. I hold the capital you need, the connections you're desperate for, and the power you're begging me to share. The silence in the room was suffocating. David remained standing, his expression carefully neutral, but I could see the questions in his eyes. I'd never told him about my past, about the scars that didn't show. Madison found her voice first. Alex, please. What happened at Lincoln High? I've regretted it for years. We were terrible to you. Cruel. There's no excuse. Her eyes glistened. Were those real tears? If I could go back and change it, I would. I was insecure, trying to fit in with people who didn't matter, and I took it out on you. I'm not that person anymore, aren't you? I tilted my head. Let's see. You built a business on someone else's technical work, refused to properly credit them, and are now pitching that work as your own revolutionary vision. You're taking credit for other people's intelligence while contributing PowerPoint slides and entitlement. I paused. Sounds exactly like the person who took credit for Sarah Kim's science fair project in junior year. Or was that a different Madison Chen? Her face crumbled. Brett leaned forward, his hands spread on the table. Look, man, Alex, we were assholes. Complete assholes. I think about the stuff we did, and I'm ashamed. But we've changed. We've grown. And this company, it's not just about us. We have employees, families depending on us. People who believe in what we're building. 15 employees, according to your pitch deck, I said. Including 4 contractors you'll probably let go the moment funding comes through. Don't weaponize their livelihoods to manipulate me, Brett. You're not that good at manipulation. Then what do you want? Madison's voice broke. Do you want us to apologize? We're sorry. Truly. Deeply sorry. Do you want us to grovel? We'll grovel. Do you want I want you to understand something. I stood, walking to the window. The city glittered below, indifferent and beautiful. When you shoved my head in that toilet sophomore year, when you filmed it and posted it online, when you made sure I was uninvited from every party and excluded from every group project, when you convinced my lab partner to switch because working with me would damage her reputation, you taught me something invaluable. I turned back to face them. You taught me that the world is full of people like you, people who coast on privilege and charm, people who take credit and dodge blame, people who survive by standing on others. I walked back to the table, placing my hands on its polished surface. And you taught me that the only way to be safe from people like you is to become powerful enough that you can never touch me again. We can't touch you, Brett said quietly. You've won, Alex. You're a billionaire. We're nothing compared to you. You've proven you're better than us. I don't need to prove anything to you. My voice was soft, but it filled the room. I stopped caring about your opinions 15 years ago. This isn't about revenge, Brett. It's about justice. Madison's tears were flowing freely now, mascara tracking down her cheeks. Then give us justice. Please. We're sorry, we'll do anything. Anything? She nodded frantically. Anything. 16 weeks later. The email arrived at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday, long after most of the city had gone to sleep. I was still in my office. I always was on Thursdays, the quiet allowing me to think without interruption. Subject line. Emergency. Please call. Madison. I stared at it for a full minute before opening. Alex, I know it's late, but something's happened. We need your help. Not as an investor, as I don't know what. Please call when you see this. It doesn't matter what time. I dialed immediately. She answered on the first ring. Alex. Thank you. I'm so sorry to bother you. But, her voice cracked. It's Brett. He's in the hospital. My chest tightened. What happened? Heart attack. He collapsed during a client presentation this afternoon. They did emergency surgery. He's stable now, but... She took a shaky breath. The doctors say it was stress-induced. Blood pressure through the roof. Exhaustion. Anxiety. They're calling it a warning his body, telling him to slow down before the next one kills him. I closed my eyes. Madison. I'm sorry. I'm glad he's stable. What can I do? That's the thing. The doctors say he needs to step back from work completely. Months of recovery, lifestyle changes, the whole thing. Which means Innovate Tech loses a co-founder right when we're about to close our biggest deals. Series B investors are already asking questions. Clients are nervous. And her voice broke completely. I don't know if I can do this alone. Alex, I'm terrified I'll mess it up again. That I'll make the wrong call and destroy everything we've been building. Silence stretched between us, filled with all the history we carried. You won't be alone, I said finally. I'll increase my involvement temporarily, weekly check-ins instead of quarterly, direct access to me for major decisions. And Jeremy's there. Your team is there. You're not the person you were 16 weeks ago, Madison. You've proven that. Have I? Her laugh was bitter. Or did I just follow your rules because you were watching? How do I know I won't revert the second things get hard without Brett here to keep me honest? It was the most vulnerable thing she'd ever said to me. The most real. You don't know. I said honestly. That's what faith is. Trusting yourself to make the right choice, even when no one's watching. Even when it's hard. Even when you're scared. You asked me to believe in you. Now you have to believe in yourself. She was quiet for so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Will you come to the hospital? She asked finally. Not for business. Just. Brett keeps asking for you. He says there's something he needs to tell you in person. I know it's a lot to ask after everything. But, text me the address. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Mount Sinai Hospital, 12:43 a.m. The ICU smelled like antiseptic and fear. That particular hospital scent that lives in your memory long after you leave. Madison was waiting in the family lounge. Still in her work clothes. Mascara smudged from crying. She stood when she saw me. Thank you for coming. I know you didn't have to. How is he? Resting. They have him on medications. Monitoring. The doctor said he was lucky another hour and... She couldn't finish the sentence. A nurse appeared. Miss Chen? Mr. Kawinski is awake and asking for his visitor. Madison looked at me. He wants to see you alone. Is that okay? I nodded. following the nurse through sterile corridors to a private room. Brett was propped up in bed, connected to an array of monitors that beeped softly in the darkness. He looked diminished somehow, not just thinner, but smaller, as if the heart attack had stripped away more than just physical strength. Alex. His voice was hoarse. You came. I pulled a chair beside his bed. Madison said you wanted to talk. I'm dying, man. He tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. I mean, not today. The doctors say I'll recover. But it made me think about everything. About what matters. What I want people to remember about me. Brett. Let me say this, please. He turned his head to look at me, his eyes red-rimmed. When you walked into that conference room 16 weeks ago, I wanted to disappear, to dissolve into the floor like I made you want to do 1,000 times in high school. I was so ashamed I could barely breathe. I stayed silent, letting him continue. But then you gave us that chance, and I thought, okay, we'll play along. We'll follow the rules. We'll do what he says so we get the money. And then we can go back to normal. He closed his eyes. Except there was no normal to go back to. The more we tried to be better, the more we realized how wrong we'd been. Not just about you, about everything. The monitors beeped steadily, marking time. Last month, my sister's kid, my nephew, Jake, he's 14. He came home crying because some kids at school were bullying him. Called him slurs, pushed him around, made him feel like dirt. Brett's voice trembled. And my sister asked me what she should do. And I looked at this kid I love. This sweet, smart, funny kid who just wants to be himself. And I saw you. I saw what we did to you, how we made you feel. A tear slid down his cheek. I told Jake about you. About how we tormented you. And how you became successful anyway. And how you gave us a second chance we didn't deserve. And you know what he said? Brett opened his eyes, looking directly at me. He said, Uncle Brett, you were a villain in someone's story. But villains can have redemption arcs if they try hard enough. Despite everything, I felt my lips twitch toward a smile. That's what I've been trying to do, Alex. Have a redemption arc. Not because you're watching, but because I finally understand the damage I caused. The pain I created. And because I want Jake to be proud of his uncle, not ashamed. He swallowed hard. Today, when I was lying on that conference room floor, chest exploding, unable to breathe, all I could think was, I don't want to die as the person I was. I want to die someday. Hopefully way in the future, as someone who made up for it. Someone who lifted people up instead of tearing them down. I sat back in my chair, processing his words. You're not going to die, Brett. You heard the doctors. But I could have. And if I had, what would my legacy be? High school quarterback who peaked at 17 and spent the rest of his life coasting on privilege. The guy who bullied Alex Rivera until he became a billionaire? He shook his head. I want my legacy to be Innovate Tech. Not the company, but what it stands for: giving people fair chances, correcting our mistakes, building something that helps instead of hurts. Then do that. I said simply. Recover. Take care of yourself. And when you're ready, come back and keep building. I'm scared, he admitted. Scared I'll mess up again. Scared I'm not good enough to be the person Jake thinks I can be. Fear is good, I told him. Fear means you care. The scariest people are the ones who don't fear the consequences of their actions, because they've never faced any. I leaned forward. You want to know what I really learned from you in Madison? Not just how cruel people can be, but how much courage it takes to change. To admit you were wrong. To become better even when it's hard. You learned that from us. Brett sounded incredulous. I learned it from watching you try. Watching you struggle with who you were versus who you wanted to be. That's harder than what I did. I paused. I built an empire from anger and determination. But you're dismantling your ego brick by brick, examining every piece, and rebuilding yourself into someone worthy of respect. That takes a different kind of strength. Brett wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, the IV line tugging slightly. Do you forgive us, Alex? Really forgive us? Not just tolerating us for business, but actual forgiveness. The question hung in the air, heavy with 16 weeks of progress and 15 years of pain. Did I forgive them? I thought about Madison's vulnerability tonight. Her fear of failing. I thought about Brett's nephew Jake, and the redemption arc a 14-year-old believed was possible. I thought about Jeremy, thriving in an environment they'd created. I thought about those scholarship students, getting opportunities because Madison and Brett were trying to make amends. I thought about Patricia's words. The ultimate measure of power is whether you use it to lift people up or push them down. I forgive you, I said. And as the words left my mouth, I realized they were true. Not because you've earned it. Forgiveness isn't something you earn. It's something you accept as a gift. I forgive you because holding on to that anger was exhausting. And because you're genuinely trying to be better. And because, I smiled slightly. Because a homeless boy once told me that heal people heal people. Brett let out a sob, a deep, shuddering release of 15 years of guilt. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you, Alex. I don't deserve it, but thank you. No one deserves forgiveness, Brett. That's what makes it grace. I stayed with him until he fell asleep. The monitors beeping their steady rhythm, his breathing evening out as the medications pulled him under. Then I found Madison in the waiting room, staring at her phone without really seeing it. She looked up when I approached. How is he? Sleeping. Emotional. But okay. I sat beside her. He's going to be fine, Madison. Physically and otherwise. She nodded, new tears forming. I've been sitting here thinking about all the what-ifs. What if he died? What if I never got to tell him how much his friendship means? What if we'd never gotten that second chance to make things right? She turned to me. Alex, I need to say something, and I need you to really hear it. I'm listening. When we were kids, I told myself stories about you. That you were too serious, too sensitive, that you couldn't take a joke. I convinced myself that what we did was just teasing. Just high school stuff, nothing serious. Her voice dropped. But it was serious. It was cruel. We were cruel. And no matter how much we've changed or how hard we try, nothing can undo the pain we caused you. Madison, let me finish. She looked at me with raw honesty. You didn't have to give us this chance. You could have destroyed us in that boardroom and been completely justified. Instead, you gave us something I'm not sure we'd have given you if our positions were reversed. Mercy. And not just mercy, investment, guidance, faith that we could become better. She wiped her eyes. I want you to know that I think about those scholarship students every single day. Jasmine, Marcus, and Keisha. I know their names, their stories, their dreams. I think about how we're helping them avoid the pain we caused you. And I think about how that's not enough. How nothing we do will ever fully balance the scales. But how we have to try anyway. The scales don't need balancing, I said quietly. That's not how healing works. It's not about making things even. It's about breaking cycles. Creating something better than what came before. She smiled through her tears. You're a better person than I'll ever be. I'm just a person who had good teachers. I thought of Patricia. Of that homeless boy. Of all the people who'd shown me kindness when they didn't have to. And now you're learning the same lessons. Teaching them to your team. To Jeremy. To those students. That's how the cycle breaks, one person at a time. One choice at a time. Madison's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then showed me the screen. An email from Jeremy. Just got off the phone with a reporter from TechCrunch. They want to do a feature on Innovate Tech's ethical AI practices. This is huge. Hope Brett's okay. We're all thinking of him. Your company is becoming something important, I said. Not just profitable, but meaningful. That's rare in tech. We couldn't have done it without you. You did it yourselves. I just showed you the door. You walked through it. We sat in companionable silence. Two people who'd traveled from opposite sides of a painful history to arrive at something like understanding. Maybe even something like friendship. What happens now? Madison asked. With Brett recovering, with everything in flux, now you step up. You lead Innovate Tech through this transition. You prove to yourself and everyone else that you don't need me watching over your shoulder to make the right choices. I stood, and I'll be here if you need me, not as your overseer, but as your partner. Someone who believes you can do this, even after everything, especially after everything. I headed toward the exit, then paused. Madison? That transparency report you published? It changed the conversation around ethical AI. You turned your biggest mistake into your greatest asset. That's not just good business, that's wisdom. Hold on to that. 2 days later, I was in a meeting with my investment team when Priya interrupted. Something she never did unless it was urgent. Mr. Rivera, I'm sorry, but you need to see this. She handed me her tablet. On the screen was a video that had been posted to Innovate Tech's social media 30 minutes ago. It showed Madison and Brett still in a wheelchair, pale but determined, sitting in their office. I pressed play. Hi, everyone. Madison, Chen, and Brett Kawinski here. Madison began. You might have seen the news about Brett's health scare. He's recovering well. Thank you for all the kind messages. But we wanted to address something more important than one person's health. Brett took over, his voice stronger than I'd expected. Over the past few months, we've been on a journey, not just building a company, but rebuilding ourselves. We've made mistakes, big ones. We've learned from them. And we've been guided by someone who had every reason to see us fail but chose to help us succeed instead. My chest tightened. Madison continued. We've never talked publicly about our relationship with our lead investor, Alex Rivera. We've kept it professional, kept the focus on our product and our mission. But Brett's health crisis made us realize something. Some stories need to be told. Alex Rivera was our classmate in high school, Brett said, his voice heavy with emotion. And we were his bullies. We tormented him for years. We made his life hell because we were insecure, cruel kids who didn't understand the damage we were causing. The camera zoomed in slightly on their faces, Madison's eyes glistening, Brett's jaw tight with controlled emotion. 15 years later, we walked into a pitch meeting and discovered that the person holding our company's fate was the same person we'd tormented. Madison said, we expected revenge. We deserved it. Instead, Alex gave us something we hadn't earned, a second chance, but it came with conditions, Brett added. We had to make things right with the people we'd wronged. We had to build our company with integrity, not shortcuts. We had to learn what it meant to lift people up instead of tearing them down. Madison leaned forward. We're sharing this because we want young entrepreneurs to know. Your character matters more than your pitch deck. How you treat people matters more than your revenue projections. And if you've made mistakes, if you've hurt people, if you've taken shortcuts, if you've been the villain in someone's story, it's never too late to choose a redemption arc. We're not perfect, Brett said. We still mess up, but we're trying every day to be worthy of the second chance we were given. And we're asking you, our users, our clients, our team, everyone watching, to hold us accountable to that standard. Madison looked directly into the camera. To Alex, thank you. For believing we could be better than our worst moments. For investing in our potential, instead of our past. For teaching us that power isn't about crushing your enemies, it's about healing broken things and helping people become who they're meant to be. And to everyone who's been bullied, overlooked, or underestimated, Brett added, your story isn't over. The people who hurt you don't get to define you. You define yourself, and someday you might even help them become better, the way Alex helped us. The video ended. I sat in stunned silence, aware that my entire investment team was staring at me. Boss, David's voice was gentle. You okay? I realized my eyes were wet. I'm fine, I managed. I need a minute. I walked to my office and closed the door, pulling up the video again. Already, it had thousands of views, hundreds of comments, people sharing their own stories of bullying, of redemption, of second chances. The conversation Madison and Brett had started was rippling outward, touching lives I'd never know. My phone rang. Unknown number. Alex Rivera. Mr. Rivera. This is Jasmine Williams. I'm one of the scholarship recipients from Lincoln High. Her voice was young, nervous, excited. I just saw that video and I wanted to call and say thank you. I didn't know the story behind the scholarship, but now I do, and it means even more. Jasmine. I remembered her photo, her essay about homelessness. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. Because of you, I'm going to MIT next fall. I'm going to study computer science and build things that help people like my family. And someday, when I have power and resources, I'm going to do what you did, give people chances they haven't earned. Believe in their potential. Break cycles instead of perpetuating them. My throat was too tight to speak. So thank you, Mr. Rivera. For being healed instead of hurt. For showing all of us what real power looks like. After we hung up, I stood at my window, looking out at the city, this empire I'd built from pain and determination, and one homeless boy's wisdom. The sun was setting, painting everything gold. Hurt people, but healed people heal people. And the healing, I realized, was just beginning. I looked at David. Pull up Jeremy Walsh's LinkedIn profile. David tapped his tablet, and a projection appeared on the screen. A young man with wire-rimmed glasses and a shy smile stared out from the image. His headline read, Freelance AI Engineer. Building the Future. One algorithm at a time. Jeremy Walsh, I said. MIT graduate. Brilliant engineer. architect of the algorithm you're selling. He's freelancing because you paid him $50,000 for 6 months of work on what's now a company seeking a $100 million valuation. No equity. No credit on the patents. No recognition. How do you Brett started? I do my research, Mr. Kawinski. Always. I crossed my arms. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to restructure your company. Jeremy Walsh will become your CTO with a 20% equity stake, vested over 4 years. You'll both dilute your shares to make room. You'll pay him a market rate salary, $250,000 to start, and you'll credit him on every patent, every pitch, every press release. Madison and Brett stared at me, stunned. Second, you're going to establish a scholarship fund at Lincoln High. $500,000, renewable annually, for students who face financial hardship and social exclusion. Students like I was. We don't have $500,000. Brett began. You will. Because third, I'm going to fund your Series A, $15 million, as requested. I let that sink in. Apex Ventures will lead your round at a fair valuation. You'll get your money. You'll scale your company. You'll have your shot at success. They looked at each other, confused and hopeful and terrified all at once. But there's a fourth condition. I continued. Every quarter, you'll present your progress to me personally. You'll show me how you're treating your employees. You'll demonstrate that you've learned what it means to build something with integrity, not just with other people's work. And if you fail, if I catch you cutting corners, exploiting workers, or falling back into your old patterns, I'll use my board seat to vote you out of your own company. Madison wiped her eyes. You're actually going to help us? I'm going to give you the same chance someone gave me, I said. After high school, I applied to 73 jobs. 73. I got 73 rejections, most of them not even personalized. I was about to give up on tech entirely when a woman named Patricia Okafor, CEO of a small startup I'd applied to, called me. She said my resume showed determination, that my GitHub projects showed talent, and that she believed in second chances for people the system overlooked. I paused, remembering Patricia's kind voice on the phone, the way she'd seen something in me when no one else would. Patricia gave me my first real job. She mentored me, pushed me, invested in me when I had nothing but potential. She taught me that true power isn't about crushing your enemies, it's about lifting up people who deserve better. I looked at Madison and Brett, really looked at them. You don't deserve better. But the people working for you do. Jeremy Walsh does, your future employees do. So I'm going to invest in them, through you, and hope that somewhere in the process, you become worthy of the second chance I'm giving you. Brett's voice was hoarse. Why? After everything we did, why would you help us? I walked to the door, then turned back one last time. Because 15 years ago, a homeless boy told me something I've never forgotten. I'd just been beaten up by you and your friends. Brett, remember that? Outside the gym after the pep rally? I was sitting behind the bleachers, bleeding and crying. And this kid, couldn't have been more than 10, came up to me. He was looking for bottles to return for change, and he saw me and sat down. The memory was crystal clear, sharp-edged even after all these years. He said, my mama told me that hurt people, but healed people heal people. You gonna be hurt or healed? Then he handed me a crumpled napkin for my bloody nose and walked away. I smiled, soft and genuine. I chose healed. I chose to build something that lifts people up instead of pushing them down. I chose to break the cycle. I opened the door. Don't make me regret choosing you. The weeks after that conference room meeting passed like a fever dream I couldn't quite shake. I didn't tell anyone at Apex the full story, not even David, though he'd given me more than a few curious looks since that day. The paperwork went through smoothly. $15 million wired in exchange for equity, board seats, and the conditions I'd outlined. Madison and Brett signed everything without hesitation, their signatures shaky but determined. But signing papers was the easy part. Living up to them. That was where the real test began. Act 3. Rising tension. The weeks after that conference room meeting passed like a fever dream I couldn't quite shake. I didn't tell anyone at Apex the full story, not even David, though he'd given me more than a few curious looks since that day. The paperwork went through smoothly. $15 million wired in exchange for equity, board seats, and the conditions I'd outlined. Madison and Brett signed everything without hesitation, their signatures shaky but determined. But signing papers was the easy part. Living up to them? That was where the real test began. 3 weeks later. Mr. Rivera. You have a call on line 3. Jeremy Walsh. I looked up from the acquisition report I'd been reviewing. Put him through. The line clicked. Mr. Rivera. This is Jeremy Walsh. I don't know if you remember me. But I remember, Jeremy. How are you settling into your new role? A long pause. That's actually why I'm calling. Madison and Brett reached out last week like you said they would. They offered me the CTO position, the equity stake, everything. I thought it was a prank at first. His voice cracked slightly. Mr. Rivera, I need to know, is this real? Did you really make them do this? I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. I gave them an opportunity to make things right. They chose to take it. Whether they follow through is up to them and you. I don't understand. Why would you do this for me? You don't even know me. I know what it's like to build something brilliant and watch other people take credit for it, I said quietly. I know what it's like to be invisible to people who should see you. And I know that talent deserves recognition, not exploitation. Another pause. When Jeremy spoke again. His voice was thick with emotion. Thank you. I don't have the words for what this means. But, thank you. Don't thank me yet. Make that algorithm everything it should be. Build something that actually eliminates bias instead of automating it. Prove that Innovate Tech deserves the investment. I will, I promise. After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my office, feeling something unfamiliar stir in my chest. Not satisfaction exactly. Something gentler. Something that felt dangerously close to hope. 6 weeks later. The first quarterly review arrived via email at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I opened the attachment over my morning coffee, a detailed report on Innovate Tech's progress. New hires. 3 engineers. All with competitive salaries and equity packages. Product development. Jeremy had identified and corrected 17 instances of algorithmic bias in the original code. Client satisfaction. Up 12% since implementing the improvements. And at the bottom, a separate PDF. Proof of the first scholarship disbursement to Lincoln High. $500,000. Now sitting in an endowment fund. 3 students had already been selected as recipients for the upcoming school year. I stared at the names and photos of those students. A girl who wanted to study engineering. A boy passionate about medicine. Another girl whose essay about overcoming homelessness made my throat tight. They looked like I had. Hopeful and scared and determined. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Madison. I know you probably don't want to hear from me outside official channels, but I needed to tell you something. Yesterday, one of those scholarship recipients, her name is Jasmine, came to our office for a tour that Jeremy arranged. She thanked me. She told me this scholarship was the difference between community college and her dream school. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. About how many people we could have helped if we'd been different. Better. I just wanted you to know. We're trying. Thank you for making us try. I read the message 3 times, then set my phone down without responding. Trying wasn't the same as succeeding. Words weren't the same as change. But it was something. A crack in the armor. Light seeping through the darkness. 10 weeks later. Alex, we have a problem. David's voice on the phone carried an edge I rarely heard. I immediately closed my laptop, giving him my full attention. What kind of problem? Innovate Tech. One of their early clients, a mid-size company called Brennan Manufacturing, just filed a complaint with the EEOC. They're claiming Innovate Tech's algorithm discriminated against older candidates. The data shows that 92% of recommended hires were under 35. My stomach dropped. Get me everything you can on this. Call Madison and Brett. Emergency board meeting. Tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. Already scheduled. I hung up and immediately pulled up Innovate Tech's hiring data. My fingers flying across the keyboard. The patterns were there if you knew where to look, a subtle but unmistakable bias against candidates over 40. Not explicit age discrimination. But the algorithm had learned to associate cultural fit and adaptability with youth. Exactly what I'd warned them about in that first meeting. Exactly what Jeremy was supposed to have fixed. The next morning, Madison and Brett arrived at Apex Ventures at 7:45 a.m. 15 minutes early. They looked exhausted, Madison's usual polish dimmed by dark circles under her eyes, Brett's tie slightly crooked, a coffee stain on his cuff. Jeremy came with them, his laptop bag clutched like a shield. We gathered in the same conference room where this had all begun. The irony wasn't lost on me. Tell me what happened, I said without preamble. Jeremy opened his laptop, his hands shaking slightly. I found the bias vectors 8 weeks ago. Age was correlating with rejection rates at a statistically significant level. I flagged it immediately, wrote new training protocols, and submitted the updated model for review. And I looked at Madison and Brett. Madison's voice was barely above a whisper. Our sales team was closing a big deal with a tech startup. They loved the current algorithm's recommendations, young, hungry candidates who'd work long hours for equity instead of salary. When Jeremy proposed changes, the client threatened to walk. So you delayed the update, I said flatly. We asked Jeremy to wait 2 weeks, Brett said. Just until the contract was signed. We thought. You thought revenue mattered more than doing the right thing. Silence. That 2-week delay is now a federal discrimination complaint. I continued. Brennan Manufacturing has evidence that your algorithm systematically excluded qualified older workers. They're talking about a class action lawsuit. And even if you settle, the publicity alone could destroy Innovate Tech's reputation before you've really launched. We know. Madison's voice broke. Alex. We know. We screwed up. We got scared and we made the wrong call, and now, she pressed her palms against her eyes. Now we're exactly what you said we were. People who cut corners and dodge blame and prioritize short-term wins over integrity. We want to make this right. Brett added quickly. We'll settle with Brennan. We'll implement Jeremy's fixes immediately, no matter what clients say. We'll be transparent about what happened and what we're doing to fix it. Just. Please don't pull your funding. Please give us another chance. I looked at Jeremy. What do you think? You're the one they ignored. Jeremy was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on his laptop screen. I think they made a mistake. A big one. But I also think they've been really trying these past few months. The culture at Innovate Tech is completely different from when I was just a contractor. They listen now. They credit my work. They've built a team that cares about doing this right. He looked up at me. I believe in second chances. Someone believed in me when Madison and Brett brought me back. Maybe they deserve that too. Second chances aren't unlimited, I said. This is your second. There won't be a third. We understand, Madison said. Do you? I stood, walking to the window. The morning sun painted Manhattan in shades of gold and shadow. Because I'm not sure you do. This isn't just about one lawsuit or one algorithm. It's about who you choose to be when no one is watching. When the easy choice and the right choice aren't the same. I turned back to face them. I was watching the security footage from your office last week. Do you know what I saw? I pulled out my phone, swiped to a video, and held it up. I saw you, Brett, staying until midnight to help your junior developer debug code you didn't understand. I saw you, Madison, turning down a lucrative client because their hiring practices were discriminatory. I saw both of you treating your team with respect. With genuine care. Their eyes widened. I've been watching you, I continued. Not because I wanted to catch you failing, but because I wanted to see if you could succeed. And you were succeeding. You were becoming better versions of yourselves. Until you got scared. We're sorry, Brett said. God, Alex, we're so sorry. Sorry isn't enough. Sorry never is. I sat back down at the table. Here's what happens now. You settle with Brennan Manufacturing. Full compensation for any discrimination. You implement Jeremy's fixes today. And you notify every single client about the changes and why you're making them. You don't hide behind legal language or PR spin, you tell the truth. That could cost us clients, Madison said quietly. Probably. It might even tank your company. I looked at her steadily. But it's the right thing to do. And if you can't choose right over easy, then you haven't learned anything. And I'm wasting my time and money on people who'll never change. The weight of my words settled over the room like snow, heavy and cold. We'll do it, Madison said finally. All of it. We'll be transparent about our mistakes and our fixes. If we lose clients, we'll rebuild with ones who value integrity over shortcuts. And if we fail, Brett added, at least we'll fail while trying to be better. I studied them for a long moment, these people who'd tormented me, who'd made my teenage years a waking nightmare, who I'd spent so many years hating. They looked small now, humbled and frightened, and desperately trying to hold on to something they were finally building the right way. Don't fail, I said quietly. Too many people are counting on you now. Jeremy. Your employees. Those scholarship students. The workers your algorithm affects. I paused. And maybe even the people you used to be the ones who deserve a chance at redemption. 12 weeks later, the transparency report went viral. Innovate Tech published a detailed account of the Brennan manufacturing situation, the bias they'd discovered, the delay in fixing it, the discrimination that resulted, and the comprehensive steps they were taking to ensure it never happened again. They included Jeremy's technical write-up on how they were retraining the algorithm, Madison's personal apology to affected candidates, and Brett's commitment to quarterly third-party audits. The tech industry response was complicated. Some clients walked away, just as Madison had feared. Others reached out, impressed by the honesty. Venture capitalists called it either refreshingly accountable or career suicide, depending on who you asked. Industry blogs analyzed it endlessly. But something unexpected happened. Job applications to Innovate Tech increased by 300%. Engineers wanted to work somewhere that admitted mistakes and fixed them. Sales leads came from companies who valued ethical AI. And Jeremy received speaking invitations from MIT, Stanford, and Carnegie Mellon to talk about building bias-free algorithms. The crisis that should have destroyed them was transforming into their greatest asset, a reputation for integrity. I watched it unfold from my office, tracking every development, reading every comment and article, and slowly, like ice thawing after a long winter, something in my chest began to soften. My assistant knocked on my door. "Mr. Rivera, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important. Her name is Patricia Okafor." I nearly dropped my coffee. "Patricia, send her in." Immediately. The woman who walked into my office was older than I remembered, her hair now silver instead of black, lines etched around her eyes and mouth. But her smile was the same, warm, kind, the smile that had changed my life. "Alex Rivera," she said, her voice rich with affection. "Look at you. They said you'd built an empire, but I had to see it to believe it." I came around my desk and hugged her, something I rarely did with anyone. "Patricia, what are you doing here? How did you?" "I read about your investment in Innovate Tech. Then I read their transparency report. Then I did some digging and found out about the scholarship fund at Lincoln High." She pulled back, studying my face with those perceptive eyes that had once seen through my resume to the person beneath. "You did something extraordinary, Alex. I just gave them money and conditions. You gave them a chance to become better. That's not just investment. That's faith." She moved to the window, looking out at the city. "When I hired you all those years ago, you were angry. Brilliant, yes, but angry. Carrying so much pain. I worried that anger would consume you or harden you into something cold. It almost did," I admitted. "But it didn't. You chose healing over hurting. You broke the cycle." She turned back to me. "Do you know what the ultimate measure of power is, Alex? It's not how much money you make or how many companies you control. It's whether you use your power to lift people up or push them down. You're lifting. You're healing. That's why I came to tell you I'm proud of you." My throat tightened. "You changed my life, Patricia. Everything I am, everything I've built, it started with you seeing something in me when no one else would. I saw what was already there. You just needed someone to believe in it." She smiled. "Now you're doing the same for others. Madison and Brett. Yes. But also Jeremy. Those scholarship students. All the people Innovate Tech will help hire fairly. The ripples of your choice will spread further than you'll ever know." After Patricia left, I sat in my office as the sun set over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. I thought about 15-year-old Alex, soaked in chocolate milk on a cafeteria floor. I thought about Madison and Brett, learning what it meant to build something with integrity. I thought about Jeremy, finally getting the recognition he deserved. And I thought about that homeless boy behind the bleachers, who'd taught me the most important lesson of all. Hurt people, but healed people heal people. I picked up my phone and did something I hadn't planned to do. I texted Madison. "I read the transparency report. You made the hard choice. That's leadership. Keep going." Her response came 3 minutes later. "We will. Because of you, we finally understand what that means. Thank you for not giving up on us when we'd given up on ourselves." I set my phone down and allowed myself something I rarely did. A moment of uncomplicated happiness. Not the satisfaction of revenge. Not the validation of success. Just the quiet joy of knowing I'd helped someone become better. The cycle was broken. The healing had begun. 6 months later, The Lincoln High auditorium looked exactly as I remembered it, same scuffed floors, same faded blue curtains, same creaky seats that had held generations of teenagers through assemblies and talent shows and graduation ceremonies. Except now, standing on the stage where I'd once received my diploma with no family present to cheer, I saw it through different eyes. The auditorium was packed. Students, teachers, administrators, and in the front row Madison, Brett, and Jeremy. All three of them looking up at me with expressions I never thought I'd see on their faces. Respect, pride, gratitude. Principal Henderson stood at the podium, her gray hair pinned back the same way it had been 15 years ago. It is my great honor to introduce today's speaker for our scholarship ceremony. Alex Rivera graduated from Lincoln High in 2010. Many of you know him as a successful venture capitalist and entrepreneur. What you might not know is that his journey started in these very halls, often in circumstances that would have broken a lesser person. My hands clenched briefly at my sides before I forced them to relax. Mr. Rivera has done more than achieve personal success. Through his leadership and generosity, he has created opportunities for students who face the same challenges he once did. Today, we celebrate the second year of the Rivera Foundation Scholarship, which has already changed the lives of 6 remarkable young people. Please welcome Alex Rivera. The applause was thunderous. I walked to the podium, looking out at hundreds of faces, some curious, some admiring, some too young to understand what this moment meant. Thank you, Principal Henderson. My voice echoed through the space. 15 years ago, I sat where you're sitting now, in those uncomfortable seats, third row, far left, because I always sat where I thought no one would notice me. A few students laughed nervously. I was invisible here, not because I wanted to be, but because I learned that being seen meant being a target. Some of you understand what I mean. You're the scholarship kids, the free lunch kids, the ones whose clothes come from thrift stores and whose shoes get resold because new ones aren't in the budget. You know what it's like to be hungry, not just for food, but for belonging, for dignity, for someone to see you and believe you matter. The auditorium had gone completely silent. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that high school doesn't matter, that bullies are just insecure, or that it gets better if you just wait it out. I paused, letting the weight of that settle. High school does matter. The way people treat you leaves scars. And sometimes those scars never fully heal, they just become part of who you are. I saw some students nodding, saw teachers exchanging uncomfortable glances. But here's what I learned. Those scars don't have to define you. They can inform you, teach you empathy, resilience, strength without controlling you. You get to decide whether your pain makes you bitter or better, whether you perpetuate cycles of hurt or break them. I looked directly at Madison and Brett in the front row. Some of you know that the people who made my time at Lincoln High painful are here today. Madison, Chen, and Brett Kawinski were my bullies. They made me feel worthless, invisible, less than human. And when they walked into my office months ago seeking investment, I had a choice: revenge or redemption, cruelty or compassion, perpetuating the cycle or breaking it. The tension in the room was palpable. I chose to break it. Not because they deserved it, but because I deserved to be free from the prison of anger I'd been carrying for 15 years. I chose to invest in their potential to change, and you know what? They did. They became better people. They built a company that stands for integrity and fairness. They created this scholarship fund that's changing lives. Madison was openly crying now. Brett had his head bowed, his hand over his face. I'm telling you this because some of you are hurting right now. Some of you are being bullied, excluded, made to feel like you don't belong. And some of you are doing the bullying maybe without even realizing the damage you're causing. This is for both of you. I gripped the podium. To those being hurt, you are not defined by their cruelty. You are brilliant and valuable and worthy of every good thing life has to offer. Your circumstances right now, the poverty, the loneliness, the pain are not your destination. They're your origin story. What you build from here is up to you. But please, please remember, healed people heal people. Don't let their hurt turn you into someone who hurts others. Several students were crying now. I saw Jasmine Williams in the third row, tears streaming down her face, nodding vigorously. And to those doing the hurting, consciously or unconsciously, stop. Just stop. That person you're mocking, excluding, tormenting, they're not less than you. They're a human being with dreams and fears and potential you can't even imagine. You don't get to diminish them to make yourself feel bigger. And 15 years from now, You'll either be proud of who you were in these halls, or you'll be desperately trying to make amends for the damage you caused. I softened my voice. But here's the beautiful part. It's never too late to change. Madison and Brett prove that. If you've been cruel, you can choose kindness. If you've been a bystander, you can choose courage. If you've perpetuated hurt, you can choose healing. Your past doesn't have to be your future. The auditorium was utterly still. Now, I want to introduce you to the 6 students who've received the Rivera Foundation scholarship over the past 2 years. These young people represent everything this scholarship is about: resilience, brilliance, determination, and the potential to change the world if given a fair chance. One by one, the scholarship recipients came to the stage. Jasmine Williams spoke about growing up in a homeless shelter and her dream of becoming a software engineer who builds technology for underserved communities. Chen talked about being the first in his family to attend college and his passion for medicine, inspired by the free clinic doctors who'd treated his mother. Keisha Johnson shared her story of foster care and her determination to become a social worker who fights for kids like she'd been. David Okonkwo, one of this year's new recipients, described immigrating from Nigeria and working night shifts at a convenience store to help his family, all while maintaining a 4 gigapascals. Melissa Rodriguez spoke about being a teenage mother who refused to let her circumstances limit her daughter's future. And finally, Tommy Park, small, shy, with glasses too big for his face, talked about being bullied for being different and how the scholarship made him feel seen for the first time. Each story was different. Each one was beautiful. Each one proved that potential has nothing to do with privilege and everything to do with opportunity. When they finished, the applause was deafening. Students stood. Teachers wiped their eyes. And in the front row, Madison and Brett were on their feet, clapping harder than anyone. After the ceremony, students mobbed me with questions, requests for photos, stories of their own struggles. I stayed for 2 hours, talking to each person who approached, because I remembered what it felt like to be invisible, and I would never make anyone feel that way again. Finally, as the auditorium cleared, Madison, Brett, and Jeremy approached. "That was incredible," Jeremy said, shaking my hand. "Thank you for including me in this. Being part of something that matters this much. It's changed my life." "You earned your place here, Jeremy. Innovate Tech wouldn't exist without you." Brett stepped forward, still moving carefully 6 months after his heart attack. He'd lost weight, his face thinner but somehow more alive than I'd ever seen it. "Alex, I need to tell you something. My nephew Jake, the one I told you about, he applied for the Rivera Foundation scholarship." I blinked in surprise. "Jake Kawinski? I didn't make the connection. Different last name." "Different last name, yeah. Jake Martinez, my sister's kid." Brett's smile was tentative. "He didn't tell me he was applying. Said he wanted to do it on his own merit, not because of our connection to you. The committee selected him as one of next year's recipients." "Brett, I felt a strange warmth in my chest. He must be extraordinary." "He is. And when he found out, you know what he said?" Brett's voice cracked. "He said, maybe Uncle Brett's redemption arc is working after all." We all laughed, the sound soft and genuine. Madison pulled an envelope from her purse. "We wanted to give you this. It's from Innovate Tech's board of directors." I opened it to find a letter and a check. The check was for $5 million, made out to the Rivera Foundation scholarship. "What is this?" "Innovate Tech just closed our Series B," Madison explained. $80 million at a $400 million valuation. "We're profitable, growing, and building something we're genuinely proud of. That check is 10% of what we raised, our way of paying forward what you did for us. And there's more," Brett added. "We're launching the Second Chances initiative at Innovate Tech, a program that specifically recruits and trains people who've faced significant barriers: former inmates, recovering addicts, people with gaps in their employment history, anyone who deserves a chance to prove themselves. We're calling it the Rivera Protocol," Jeremy said with a grin. "Because you taught us that everyone deserves to be seen for their potential, not their past." I stared at the check, at these 3 people who'd become something I never expected. Colleagues, partners, maybe even friends. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll keep pushing us," Madison said. "Keep holding us accountable. Keep believing we can be better than we were. Because that belief, that's what changed everything." 3 months later, the rooftop of Apex Ventures was reserved for special occasions. Tonight, it was filled with portfolio company founders, investors, journalists, and the Innovate Tech team celebrating their official Series B announcement. I stood at the edge, looking out at Manhattan's glittering skyline, when a familiar voice spoke behind me. "You're hiding at your own party. That's very on brand for you." I turned to see Patricia Okafor, elegant in a navy dress, holding 2 glasses of champagne. She handed me one. "I'm not hiding, I'm observing." "You're always observing." She clinked her glass against mine. "But tonight, you should be celebrating. Innovate Tech's success is your success. It's their success. I just gave them resources." "Alex," Patricia's tone was gently chiding, "you gave them more than resources. You gave them a mirror to see themselves clearly, a roadmap to become better, and the grace to stumble while learning. That's not investment, that's mentorship, leadership, love, even in its way." I took a sip of champagne, considering her words. "Did you know? When you hired me 15 years ago, did you know I'd been bullied?" "I suspected." "You had that look, hyper-vigilant, expecting rejection, surprised by kindness. I'd seen it before." She smiled softly. "I'd lived it before. My father was a janitor. My mother cleaned houses. I was the scholarship kid at my private school. And let me tell you, wealthy white kids in the 80s were not kind to poor black girls. Patricia, I never knew, because I didn't tell you. Just like you didn't tell Madison and Brett everything about your pain until you were ready." She looked out at the city. "But I recognized something in you, Alex. Not just brilliance. Brilliance is common enough. I saw someone who had a choice to make. Become bitter or become better. And I saw someone who might choose better if given a chance. You changed my life." "No, honey. I opened a door. You walked through it. And then you opened doors for others. Madison, Brett, Jeremy. Those scholarship students. Everyone in Innovate Tech. All the people their platform will help hire fairly. You've created a cascade of opportunity." She turned to me, her eyes warm. "Do you understand how rare that is? Most people who gain power use it to protect themselves, to punish those who hurt them, to hoard resources. You used it to heal, to lift, to break cycles." Before I could respond, David approached with Madison and Brett. "Sorry to interrupt," David said, "but they want to make a toast." We walked back to the center of the rooftop where someone had set up a microphone. Madison stood before it, the crowd quieting. "Thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate Innovate Tech Series B. This has been the hardest and most meaningful year of our lives." She looked at Brett, who stood beside her. "We've learned that building a company isn't just about technology or market fit or growth metrics. It's about character, integrity, having the courage to admit when you're wrong and the humility to learn from your mistakes." Brett took the mic. "We've been blessed to have a lead investor who taught us these lessons, not through lectures, but through example. Alex Rivera could have destroyed us when we walked into his office months ago. Instead, he invested in our potential to change. And we're standing here tonight because of that faith. But more importantly," Madison continued, "we're standing here as different people. Better people. People who understand that success without integrity is just hollow ambition. People who know that how you treat people matters more than how much money you make." She raised her glass. "So this toast isn't just to Innovate Tech Series B. It's to second chances. To redemption arcs. To breaking cycles of hurt and choosing healing instead. And most of all, to Alex Rivera, mentor, investor, and the person who taught us that the ultimate measure of power is whether you use it to lift people up or push them down. To Alex." "To Alex," the crowd echoed. I raised my glass, uncomfortable with the attention but moved by the sentiment. Across the rooftop, I caught Jasmine Williams' eye. She'd been invited, as a Rivera Foundation representative. She smiled at me, mouthing 2 words, "Thank you." Later, as the party wound down and guests trickled away, I found myself alone on the rooftop again. The city spread out before me, each light a life, a story, a possibility. My phone buzzed, a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Rivera? This is Tommy Park, one of the scholarship students. I just wanted to tell you something. Today at school, I saw a kid getting bullied, pushed around, called names, the usual stuff. And I did something I've never done before. I stood up for him, told the bullies to back off, sat with the kid at lunch. And you know what? 3 other people joined us. We're starting an anti-bullying club at Lincoln. We're calling it the Rivera Initiative." Because you taught us that healed people heal people. Thank you for healing. Thank you for teaching us to heal too. I read the message 3 times, my vision blurring. This was what it was all about. Not the billions in assets I managed. Not the successful companies in my portfolio. Not even the scholarship fund or the investments. It was this. A kid finding courage he didn't know he had. Standing up for someone who needed it. Starting a ripple that would spread further than I'd ever see. Hurt people, but healed people heal people. And the healing, the beautiful, messy, miraculous healing was multiplying exponentially. Touching lives I'd never know. In ways I'd never fully understand. 1 year later, the documentary crew had been following Innovate Tech for 6 months, creating a film about ethical entrepreneurship and second chances. Today was the final interview. I sat across from the director, a woman named Chen, no relation to Madison, who'd spent her career documenting stories of redemption and transformation. So, Alex, she said, camera rolling, if you could go back to that day in the cafeteria, to 17-year-old Alex covered in chocolate milk, what would you tell him? I thought about it for a long moment. I'd tell him that his pain has purpose. That every humiliation, every moment of isolation, every tear he cries alone in the bathroom, it's all being stored up as fuel for something beautiful. I'd tell him that the people hurting him are teaching him lessons they don't understand. Empathy, resilience, the difference between power and cruelty. I paused. And I'd tell him that 15 years from now, he'll be sitting in a conference room holding the fate of his bullies in his hands, and he'll have a choice. He can become what they were using power to diminish and destroy, or he can become something better, something healing. And what did you choose? I chose to be healed instead of hurt. To lift instead of push down. To break the cycle. I smiled. And that choice led to more beauty than I could have imagined. A company built on integrity. Scholarships changing lives. Kids like Tommy Park starting anti-bullying clubs. My nephew Jake Brett's nephew wearing a Rivera Foundation shirt to school because he's proud of what we built together. Wait, Sarah interrupted. Jake Kawinski is your nephew now. Not by blood. But Brett's become, I don't know, something like a friend. And Madison too. And when family lines blur and former enemies become allies in the same mission. When hurt transforms into healing. I shrugged. Labels stop mattering. What matters is the work. The healing. The choice we make every day to be better than our worst moments. One final question, Sarah said. What do you want people to take away from your story? I looked directly into the camera. That you're not defined by what was done to you. You're defined by what you do next. That forgiveness isn't weakness, it's the ultimate form of power. And that the most revolutionary thing you can do in a world full of hurt is choose healing. Choose lifting instead of pushing. Choose grace over grudges. I leaned forward. If you've been hurt, you have a choice. Become bitter or become better. If you've done the hurting, you have a choice. Continue the cycle or break it. Either way, the power is yours. The question is, what will you do with it? We've reached the end of Alex's journey from victim to victor, from wounded to healed. His story proves that our greatest power lies not in revenge, but in redemption, not just for ourselves, but for those who hurt us. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose between bitterness and healing? Between revenge and grace? What did you choose, and how did it change you? Share your story in the comments below. Your journey might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this story moved you, hit that subscribe button because there are more stories of redemption, resilience, and the power of second chances coming your way. Remember, hurt people, but healed people heal people. Which one will you be?